Hello movie nerds, and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, a podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about the television show Spec Ops Lioness. This is yet another sort of, not spin-off of Yellowstone, but just another Taylor Sheridan TV show adaptation of something. I will say right out of the gate, I can say this one for me is not nearly as hard to sit through as like his multiple spinoffs to Yellowstone, of which I know we are meant to be getting another one down the line somewhere. With the writer strike and actor strike currently going on, I am not sure when that additional spinoff to Yellowstone will happen, but I do know that's been announced, and Matthew McConaughey is supposed to be stepping basically into the shoes to carry on for Kevin Costner, since Kevin Costner is leaving Yellowstone and Yellowstone is dissolving away. Now, opposite to kind of Taylor Sheridan sort of dealing in something that he is fairly familiar with, and that is cowboy culture, we've got Lioness, which is very much like military oriented. And I have to say, I don't know if maybe I'm just not a big fan of what Taylor Sheridan does, or his writing style, or how he writes. I was all in for probably the first 3, I'm going to say even 4 seasons of Yellowstone, and then kind of the ending of season 4 and definitely season 5, my interest in Yellowstone just completely dropped off. I think that there is this very small window of wiggle room when you are dealing in real life or reality or shows that are meant to be taking place now. And that is something that I struggle with Spec Ops Lioness. I think Zoe Saldana is absolutely a standout, as she is in most everything that she puts her mind to. I think she always brings her A game. She is always on point, and this television series is no different. Where I start to kind of lose it a little bit is that I guess what I was expecting, because you bring in a name like Zoe Saldana, and I am assuming that she is going to be the main character, a bit like, you know, the Jack Ryan television show, right? I know what I'm in for. I know who I'm focused on, because that is the main character. But in this one, Zoe Saldana is sort of a main character-ish. Like, she is a main character in that she is the one that's in charge of the unit and therefore calling the shots, but she's not the protagonist, or what I would consider the main protagonist in the show. That would be the character Cruz, and that is where the show loses me. She is 90 pounds soaking wet. I am supposed to believe she is like this badass because she comes from a gang neighborhood and she can do 15 pull-ups, which is better than any woman, and right along there with the men. I don't believe it. It's not that I don't believe that someone who is raised in a harder area is going to have a lot more like street smarts and a lot more ability to take care of themselves than, say, someone who is raised in a penthouse. Absolutely, probably so. I'm expecting to see muscle. I am expecting to see some sort of weapons efficiency. I am expecting to watch her carry herself in a certain way. And that doesn't really happen with the character of Cruz. She seems like she is just an inch away from being scared through pretty much every single scene. Like, if you're going in as a special, operations operative in anything, and you're expecting me to believe that you can go into, something like Afghanistan or what have you, where the possibility of torture is very high, where your life is on the line, but some dude trying to get a little bit handsy is like something that scares her to death. That's where my brain is like, it's not matching up. And a lot of the things that are kind of like decision making, there are going to be a couple of spoilers in here, just FYI. So if you haven't watched, probably skip the review from this point and come back to it. But Zoe Saldana at one point needs to figure out the limits that the character of Cruz can go through. So she stages this sort of fake kidnapping and basically just beats the shit out of this girl, which to me, fine. Like if that's something in the military, I'm not extremely familiar with the military, right? So I don't know how often these kinds of practices happen or what their purposes would be. But in my mind, this is something that would make sense to do before you've started an operation, right? Like when you sign her on, kind of stage that in the beginning, know what her limits are before you put her out into the field. That makes plausible sense to me. But you don't deploy an operative and then stage a kidnapping, beat the crap out of her, and expect the people that you've deployed her into undercover to not recognize that. Like she goes into this scene with these people that she's meant to be like undercover, you know, one of them making friends, whatever, and she's just covered in bruises and cuts and all of this stuff, and she's making up this piss poor story of how she got all of these injuries. And to me, especially in a family that has like security cameras, is checking your license plates, you know, all of that kind of stuff, that's going to be a giant red flag for them that you just suddenly come in and you've got this pretty easy to debunk reason why you have, you know, all of these injuries. It's just, it doesn't make sense. It's like if you wrote it in a way that was just a little bit more plausible, then I don't have to suspend my belief quite as far to go along with what you're telling me. And I just, for one, I don't know, I have a really hard time with keeping up with what story is meant to be the main story, because there's all these like separate offshoots. Am I supposed to care about her family or not? Am I supposed to care about this guy that she's helping in episode 3 or not? Like, if there is just one story, can we stick to that? Like, why do I need to know that her teenage daughter is kind of just a spoiled little brat? Like, it doesn't lend anything other than to kind of the mind, I guess, of what potentially Zoe Saldana is going through. But because her character isn't necessarily really a main character that you get to see all that often, why do I need to know about her personal relationship with her husband or her personal relationship with her kids? She's really just calling the shots. She's not the one that's on the ground. I am pretty disappointed by that, I will say. I would much have preferred to see Zoe Saldana like as the undercover agent going in and doing these missions, because she is the one that I feel like stands completely out to me. And in this, you know, they have a lot of bigger names. There's Zoe Saldana in this, Nicole Kidman is in it, and Morgan Freeman, among others. But I don't think up to this point, I'm 3 episodes in, I don't think I've seen Morgan Freeman in the show yet. So I'm not sure what his character is or when he's supposed to come into it. I'm waiting for that moment where I'm like, okay, this is something that I want to continue watching. And it just hasn't hit. So for me, I don't know if it's just a Taylor Sheridan thing that his story writing and my brain don't mesh very well together. I'm interested, I guess, to see his spinoff, his third spinoff of Yellowstone, only because I really like Matthew McConaughey. And I genuinely only really tuned in to Special Ops Lioness because of Zoe Saldana. So the fact that I'm really just watching her call the shots, but I'm not watching her in any of the sort of action sequences, yeah, is pretty disappointing for me in this show. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts on Special Ops Lioness. I would love to know what you guys thought if you are watching it. Subscribe if you want to join the Movie Nerd family. And I hope to see you in the next episode.